this space, and it's fascinating to see how fast this is moving. So we're just going to give you a few snippets of what we're doing in the assessment process. So traditionally, what we're used to is aerial photography. We're used to, what the material we now get from drones and aerial photography being LiDAR data, so point cloud data. Rico, let's just quickly go through this. So point cloud data, photogrammetry, etc. Now that's traditionally how it's outputted. What we now can do is take that data that's already been flown by the aerial photography groups and put it into a fully immersive environment. So what we're trying to do is to ensure that everyone in the room, everyone present, has a clear understanding of what we're trying to talk about without the need for drawings or reports. So this is just a simple example of how we've used existing data, which has been repurposed for the engine and spat out in a fully executable file. We can send you this at home, you can watch it at home, providing you've got a reasonable graphics card, probably $700 graphics card.
Not watch it, but interact.
Interact with it, that's very good. Thank you, Rico. So you're right, that's the very important thing. This is immersion. So we're not talking about watching a video, we're talking about being immersed and being, I guess, able to have a discussion in real time. So if you want to talk about how wide something is or how tall something is, Rico can use a suite of tools that we have. So Rico might just do a quick little measurement.
So I'll just say go down to this little path here and use a measurement tool to measure how wide this path is. So that's something we can do in this environment, and obviously also with heights, radii, areas and so forth, just giving us the ability to measure out things we're interested in immediately without having to pre-prepare that information.
One of the things that the gaming industry does is take all the complexities of Revit models and SketchUp models, Lumion models and 12D and simply turn it into something anyone can use. A 6 or a 66 or 96-year-old mouse and keyboard game controller touchscreen. That's one example. I'm just going to quickly move you through a whole range of examples. So community consultation, traditionally this is what we have, a series of drawings and reports with a whole lot of information on them. One of the challenges we have is understanding what all those bits and pieces of information are. What we're able to do is tailor and layer up that information, and even just the ability, we just jumped ahead, even just the ability to simply go to site without going to site. So this is a project down in Torquay in Melbourne. The ability, rather than trying to explain contours and hills and slopes, we can all do this in this room. Everyone can understand it, here and there and now. So what I'm just trying to do is show a few examples of how it's transforming our assessment process. When we're sitting at councils, when we're doing community consultations, when we're having stakeholder engagement, even when we're having design discussions. And the ability to empower the decision makers to discover and understand what they need to understand themselves is quite revolutionised. It's quite revolutionary because traditionally, as Rico said before, we kind of watch a video or we look at a PowerPoint, but this is something that we can be completely immersed in, and you can discover things yourself. So on the left-hand side, we have a series of user interfaces that we design based on whatever the requirements are. In this particular case, we have the ability to just talk around what's happening in the region there. We're just sending this over Google or near maps or whatever's available. We can layer over any GIS information, any structure planning information, just help people understand. We can then, in this particular case, I'm just conscious of time, we just move into, in this particular exercise, it was discussing with council around some density options and what that would mean for the open space corridor and the embellishments. One of the challenges that we have in this industry is we spend most of the time in plan view and we spend most of the time reading about what that plan view means. What we're able to do here is go to ground and understand it from the ground. So in this particular case, we've got some density options between the two plans. We've just taken the 12D from the engineers, we've taken the land use plan from the planners and the density plan, layered that in. Then importantly, we've taken some concepts from landscape architects and put it into this base plan. And what we can do now is go to the ground and experience...
So what I'll do to do that, so just so you can follow a little bit, this is a 2D plan overlay. I'm going to take that off. And then now for each of these alternatives, I can just turn some grayscale houses on, and then we can go between these different options here. But as Luke said, it's not all about the plan perspective, but actually going to the ground where people live, and now also having the ability to walk through this space, look at the different alternatives just across this green spine here, and actually see what this change means from the ground. And in this case then, the story really is that additional embellishments like this community centre, we can just turn these things on. So in any discussions with council, there's different options, just the ability to show that from the ground and have an informed discussion around it. What we'll then do, if we want to say talk about this community centre, take a snapshot of that, and then in our meeting we would be able to say mark up this pyramid looking thing on the community centre and say remove this, my mouse is going away, remove this and that is recorded now in our PDF, so we can export that, email it straight out, and that's sort of taking care of our meeting follow-up. So again, moving around in a 3D environment, making decisions then and there, and then exporting that information to everyone attending or not attending the meeting.
And what I guess I particularly like with this from a design point of view is that everyone in that meeting can understand an outcome then and there. No need for follow-up meetings, no need for follow-up notes. It's very powerful. So we're starting to use that in a very interesting way in community consultation. We're allowing community to give us feedback on exactly what they're looking for. And we just, the ability to create a snapshot or perspective that used to cost, anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000, we can now do in the 60th of a second. You can do yourself. In a moment, if you have some time, we'll show some of the rendering